This has to be the dumbest person I've done a video on.
Recently on the internet, there's been a lot of discussion around genital preferences and transphobia. In this video, I'm going to use the word cissexism instead of transphobia, but they're really similar words. At its most basic, cissexism means prejudice or discrimination against transgender people.
Then why not just say transphobia instead of using needlessly confusing Tumblr jargon? I'm already confused enough just looking at you. Fuck it, I'm sticking to transphobia because it means the exact same thing anyway.
So what's been happening is that some people are making the argument that it's not cissexist at all to only be attracted to people with one kind of genitals.
And they would be right? What, worst case scenario, some trans person out there won't get a date? That doesn't seem like a big deal to me. And you're speaking as if only one kind of trans exists. I mean, there's pre-op and there's post-op. I'm no expert, but I'm sure a post-op lesbian is gonna have a better chance in the dating world than a pre-op lesbian with a huge horse cock, because one fits the criteria for lesbian sex and the other doesn't. I mean, I'm probably speaking too soon, but I don't think her really understands the distinction.
For example, these people might argue that being attracted to only women with vaginas in no way negatively affects trans people. On the other hand, I would argue that it's more complicated than that.
Of course!
Really?
No.
We all have our implicit biases built into our preferences.
Being a lesbian turned off by penis is not a bias, it's nature.
And gender isn't as simple as just the genitals you have. But after I say that, I usually get a bunch of blatantly cis-sexist responses. So I thought I'd address all of those responses at once. Number one, you're being homophobic. In this argument, I often get accused of homophobia, lesbophobia, or lesbian erasure by lesbians who believe that I'm trying to change their sexual orientation or identity.
Why?
You're only shaming lesbians into sucking meaty cock by telling them they're transphobes. I mean,
Why the fuck would they think that?
They say that my language sounds a lot like a dude who tried to turn them straight or like conversion therapy. Those responses are rooted in cis-sexism.
no. It's rooted in the anger felt when some gender-confused LGBT piggybacker tries to tell you and dictate to you what you should be attracted to, based on their own warped personal bias.
This is because I'm not telling lesbians that they can't be lesbians.
Well, a big part of lesbian sexuality is lesbian sex, which I'm pretty sure consists of going feral on fur burgers. And you're telling lesbians, on the off chance they should meet a lesbian with a dick, that they should give that up. So yeah, you kinda are.
If you're a woman who only likes women, go ahead, identify as a lesbian. But some women have penises.
No.
And if the fact that some lesbians might be attracted to those women offends you, it's because you don't think trans women are real women.
No, Macaulay Culkin. What they find offensive is someone telling them what they should be attracted to. Your head lives so far up your own ass, you're not even seeing the other side of the argument.
That's because these accusations of homophobia make it sound like I'm trying to convince lesbians to like men, but I'm not.
Oh no, just one of the most prominent identifiers of the male gender.
And try to focus on his genitals.
I'm trying to show that preferences for women with vaginas over women with penises might be partially informed by the influence of a cis-sexist society. Number two, you're upholding rape culture. This is honestly the worst response that I've heard and probably the most cis-sexist one.
This is the best part.
That's because trans women have a long history of being accused of being rapists by cis women. It's the logic behind bathroom bills that prevent trans women from using the right bathroom. It's why some cis women are terrified of the idea of sharing a locker room with a trans woman. This is a very common tactic used by anti-trans folks to discredit trans women as just men trying to invade women's spaces so they can rape them.
What?
Reaching that far to make the argument all about you. That's a talent that you are only born with. I can't even bring out the small violin on that because I'm in awe of the maneuvers that were taken to get here. Completely glossed over lesbians talking about their experiences being repulsed by male genitals due to corrective rape or some kind of trauma. But you got a whole college thesis on how trans people might sometimes be accused of being rapists. Which has nothing to do with anything! Just a little note here. If you want to touch on underhanded tactics used in debates, I think manipulating your opponent's emotions by saying how much your team's had it worse in an attempt to derail the conversation is a good place to start.
Even if this is not your intention when bringing this up, this is what you are implying, and it is where this argument comes from. Suggesting that trans women are rapists for wanting to be fully recognized as women is extremely harmful.
What the hell are you talking about? What the hell does this have to do with anything? Tell me what's happening!
And I should note that I'm not saying you have to do anything without consent. I'm a big fan of affirmative consent, and you should never feel pressured to have sex with somebody.
Nice try, but no. Doesn't matter how you want to twist it. You're saying that a cis person not wanting to sleep with a trans person with genitals incompatible with their sexuality has a consequence. The consequence? Being seen as a bigot by your peers. I don't know about you, but that sounds like fucking coercion.
This isn't about an individual. This is not saying you have to have sex with a trans woman or you're cis-sexist. It's saying that you should examine the societal influences on your preferences.
And you said those influences are transphobic. So an individual who makes decisions based on those influences must be transphobic. I don't know if you're really this stupid, or maybe you're just catering to your stupid ass audience, but either way, this is all bullshit.
There's a massive difference between honing in on individual scenarios and considering wider societal issues and attitudes.
But doesn't social justice warrior doctrine dictate that society influences everyone all the time, ever? That gender and sexuality are not biological but social constructs? Now you're backpedaling on this issue. Like, oh no, I'm talking about societal issues, not, individual circumstances. They fell through the cracks. Like, society had nothing to do with that shit.
Number 3, I'm allowed to have my preferences. Technically, you're right. Technically, you're right. Technically.
Okay, so we're back to having a rapey vibe.
Simply saying, it's my preference, end of discussion, is a good way of sidelining all of those issues and instead centering the feelings of cis people in a discussion that's about trans people. Number 4, I have a trans friend who says this is okay. People love their tokens. I've done an entire video on moral licensing and why you can even find people of color who openly advocate racist policies. That doesn't make you right. Having a trans friend doesn't mean you're suddenly an expert on trans issues.
That's funny, because pretending to be trans doesn't either.
Number 5, I'm triggered by penises because of past sexual trauma.
Hold on to your butts.
That's completely understandable. I've never said that anyone should have to have sex with someone with a penis if they don't want to.
The manufacture, packaging, distribution, and marketing of bullshit.
If intimacy with someone who has a penis is triggering for you, I would never suggest that you have to do that. Take your time to heal and work through your trauma at your own pace. Just be aware that the majority of people making the I could never date someone with a penis argument are not doing so because of trauma or triggers.
Yeah, they're doing it because it's hardwired in their brain, you fucking asshole.
The first 2 responses in particular come from TERF, radfem, and gender-critical ideologies, which are all proudly anti-trans. Even if you don't consider yourself a part of those movements, you're siding with them when you use their arguments. Their entire platform is cis-sexist, and their arguments reflect that. So even if you say you believe trans women are women, it doesn't do a whole lot of good if you're still completely siding with folks who don't believe that trans women are women.
Yeah, so remember, lesbians, if you don't want to disregard your God-given sexuality to blow a mannish chick with a dick, the TERFs have won. We gotta get those TERFs, man. They hate us for our freedom. They hate us for our freedom. They hate us for our... You can fuck all the way off with that. If you're not 100% with us, you're 100% against this bullshit. This ain't X-Men, Fagnito.
You have the freedom to say whatever you want. I'm just asking you to consider if it's necessary to say those things when they reflect harmful or violent rhetoric.
Kinda hard to take that seriously when you label anything that makes you the slightest bit uncomfortable as violent rhetoric.
Because if you have an opinion that you know is only going to make people feel bad about themselves, why constantly share it with the world?
Really? Well, come here. Just come here. Then you should take your own advice and delete this video immediately.
It's fine to not find people attractive, but it's mean to constantly yell about how unattractive you find those people, especially when those people are oppressed. And And the last thing I want to say about this is that if you'd rather not have sex with a woman who has a penis, maybe just don't make such a huge deal of it. Trans women are often afraid of not being found attractive or desirable after coming out, and you're not helping. If you really want to be an ally to trans people, you could just not talk about it.
If you'll allow me, I'd like to take the time to be really honest. Maybe I don't give a fuck. Maybe I don't care about being an ally. Maybe I'm beginning to care less and less about these issues because of morons like you being the gatekeepers of the LGBT. The trans and gay community have been fighting for a very long time to have their sexuality and gender recognized, not as a perversion, but as hardwired at birth. Now we got a bunch of dead-eyed, creepy, pancake makeup-wearing wannabes who are trying to undo that. Gender is a social construct. If you don't fuck me, that's transphobia. No, bitch. If I don't want to fuck you, you respect my decision and get your Peter Pan looking ass out of my face. See, that's the problem with your logic as a whole. This is not a fucking conversation. No one, not gay, straight, lesbian, trans, owes you an I have a dream speech length explanation as to why they don't like a certain set of genitals. It ain't happening. No. And you do not have the right to call them a bigot if you don't like the explanation. What we like sexually is ingrained in us. It's mental, it's biological, and most of all, none of your fucking business. Anyway, I'm gonna stop the video here because my brain is being squeezed to death by the muscles in my head. And I must say, if you don't comment, rate, and subscribe, that's racism. I don't make the rules.
That I'm trying to change their sexual orientation or identity. They say that my language
I have given a name to my pain.
straight or like conversion therapy.
It is Riley
Responses are rooted in cis sexism.